What's up guys and welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the UFC 307 card, which is taking place in Salt Lake City in a couple months time, right? And this shit's got no main event. Right now the only title fight that's not even booked for the card but is likely is Pennington versus Pena, and then there's some other decent fights on the card, but this is desperately in need of some work, especially given that there really isn't many options for big title fights to main event this card. I'm going to be talking about some potential options to save this card. I'm going to provide a bunch of options, more than we need really, and then we're going to save this card. We're going to be pretty optimistic here because the likely situation that we get is going to be a Pennington main event and then just some bum-ass prelims. But I'm going to actually try and stack this card a little bit, and if we don't have an incredible main event, at least have a really good undercard. Providing a bunch of options. First of all, though, let's talk about what's actually on the card right now. So, fights currently on the card, these are all booked. Pena versus Pennington, not fully booked, but pretty likely. We got Aldo versus Mario Batista. We got Holland versus Chris Curtis. That's a good fight. Movzar versus Aljamain Sterling, great fight. Ketlin Vieira versus Kayla Harrison, the man, good fight. Pennington versus Esparza, that's whatever. Rodriguez versus Lucindo, that's whatever. Pateria versus Almeida, that's whatever. So now, let's talk about some potential title fights that we can add to the card, because there's 8 fights that I just named there, so we still got room for around 6 more fights. I reckon at least one of those needs to be a title fight, and then I'll talk about some other stuff after that. But first of all, let's look at some title fights. So the first potential title fight is the least likely, but probably the best option. Belal Muhammad versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. This would be a very good title fight to add to the card. And if you had this as the main event with a Pennington co-main, look, it is quite literally like the definition of mid, but at least it's not a bad main event. Belal Shavkat, it's unlikely though. I doubt they're able to convince Belal to turn around that quick, especially given that he did get cut open against Leon. But this would be a good main event. A very hardcore fans main event with Shavkat. A lot of the casuals wouldn't really be too stoked about this one. There's no McGregor, there's no John Jones, so of course the casuals are going to have a fucking aneurysm. But Belal versus Shavkat would be a passable main event in my opinion. But we got another couple options. The next option is Alexandra Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. Now this is a decent option, and this is probably less passable than Belal Shavkat, but at least this is a good matchup, and this again, very hardcore fans, even more hardcore fan kind of matchup than Belal Shavkat, because no casual's gonna know who Kai Asakura is. He's making his debut. It's like basically confirmed he's probably going to get a title shot. I think that's the plan for December from what I'm hearing, but we could just move this forward, and if desperate times call for desperate measures, we get this main event on the card. But we could also add Zhang Wei Li versus Tatiana Suarez. That is a potential title fight. That is probably the worst option in terms of double stacking women's MMA title fights, with all due respect. But that's another option that you could do. But now let's talk about some potential number 1 contender fights or top contender fights that could be added to really spice up this card if it doesn't have a really good title fight main event. First option is very unlikely. It's Charles Oliveira versus either Colby Covington or Alexander Volkanovski. I doubt either of these happen, but this would be a saving grace for the card. Like if we end up with a Pennington main event, at least this as the co-main would provide the fans, especially the casuals, something to look forward to. And the hardcore fans would love this too. Volk versus Oliveira is like a dream fight for a lot of people. When Volk was champion at featherweight, Oliveira was champion at lightweight. Many people were kind of hypothesizing how this fight would go. Oliveira versus Colby's also pretty good up at welterweight. Colby's been yapping, so if he actually wants to stand on business and not just talk like a bitch and never actually back it up, then I'm more than happy to see this fight too. Let me know in the comments, would you prefer to see Oliveira versus Colby or Volk versus Oliveira? But either of these fights would be a very suitable co-main event. Honestly, if desperate times call for desperate measures, you could honestly make this the main event because it just looks better on a poster. Oliveira versus Volkanovski looks better on a pay-per-view poster than Pena versus Pennington as the headlining bill. So even if they had Oliveira versus Volk and then Pena versus Pennington on the card, it wouldn't really it would actually matter which order you put those in. So honestly, I wouldn't mind this is the main event if they had no other title fight on the card apart from Pena Pennington. But what else could we add? Davison Figueiredo versus Piotr Jan. This would be a very good fight. Again, not very likely because I'm pretty sure Jan's still a little bit injured. Figgy did just fight, to be fair. So this would be a very last ditch, like, come on guys, can you please fight? We need some other interesting matchups on this card. We need something to appeal to the casuals because they already got like Movzar vs. Aljo is just not a very casual appeal fight. Jose Aldo's on there, which is cool. Holland versus Curtis is whatever, but like, there's no like crazy standout fight where you're like, oh my god, that's nuts, I need to watch this fight. If they added Pidian versus Davison Figueiredo, that's like a number one contender fight in the bantamweight division, and that would definitely get a lot of excitement around the card. What else could we add though? Kamaru Usman versus Ian Gary is another potential matchup. Shavkat Rakhmonov. Sorry, Jack Della Maddalena versus Usman or Jack versus Ian Gary are both decent options. But Usman, he's fought in Salt Lake City before. Obviously, this would be a good way for him to, kind of shake off the cobwebs and eliminate some of the demons from that head kick knockout against Leon Edwards the last time he fought in Salt Lake City. Him versus Ian Gary would be a very good fight. This is another casual appeal one. The casuals know who Usman is. According to Dana White, he's the greatest welterweight of all time. And Gary's still undefeated, still on a bit of a streak right now, losing some hype because his performances this year have been very dull. But this would definitely be a fight that would gain interest. If Ian Gary wins, you definitely give him a title shot. He would definitely deserve it if you beat Usman. If Usman wins, he could arguably get a title shot too, because people are already trying to justify why Usman should fight Bilal. So if he beats Ian Gary, then fair enough. Definitely a viable number one contender or valid number one contender there. And if Ian Gary wins, then you've pretty much got if Ian Gary beats Usman, then we might have discovered a new racially motivated fighter, because Ian Gary has beat Neil Magny, Jeff Neal, Michael Venom Page, and if he then goes out there and beats Usman, Leon Edwards, you best watch out. It's unfortunate for him Leon's not champion anymore, because I don't know if he can beat Bilal, but maybe if Leon was champ, you never know. But no, this would be a very good fight, another one that they could potentially add. Now, look, are all of these likely? Do I think this is what's going to happen? No. Knowing the UFC, they're going to fucking add, like, Derek Lewis versus Alexander Romanov. They're going to move that forward, or they're going to, like, do some other random shit, some dead fight. They're going to add Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze 2 to this card and call it a day. But these are the optimistic options that would actually save this card. So yeah, let's talk about a couple more. Next up, we got Josh Emmett versus Arnold Allen. This is another viable fight that you could do. Allen just fought. He didn't take too much damage. Maybe it would be a bit too much of an ask. But if they said, yo, Arnold Allen, come over here, fight Josh Emmett on the pay-per-view card, are these two going to complain? No. Also, it would set up a little bit of a four-man tournament with Allen, Emmett, Movzar, and then Aljo as well. You could get like winners fighting each other, losers fighting each other, something like that. And this would be a sick fight. This is a really good fight in terms of entertainment value. Not crazy name value-wise. Some of the casuals probably know Josh Emmett because they've seen some highlights of him KOing people. They probably saw him KO Bryce Mitchell. But like, not heaps of casual fans are going to like be super intrigued in this fight, but as a hardcore fan, if they added this to the card, I would definitely be like, it's sick. Because my kind of plan here is like, they could add... The card right now is not terrible. Like, Aldo fight, Holland, Movzar, like, these are some decent fights, right? But if they added, like, a big title fight, then it's alright. It's a solid pay-per-view. But then, it's like the hierarchy. They add one of these big title fights, they don't need to add much more of the stuff I'm proposing. They don't add any more title fights, they need to add, like, at least two of these top contender fights, or more. And, yeah, that's what I'm talking about here. Allen versus Emmett, this would need to be like, this would not be a solo fight that would get added to the card. They would need to add some other big matchup. So yeah, I'm not too like, this would be a very exciting fight. I'd be looking forward to it. This wouldn't save the card, but it would definitely add some more value to it and give you another reason to tune in. But now let's talk about some sort of unranked fights, because we know the UFC is not going to just do full fucking 10 top 15 fights, top 10 fights, put it on this card. So let's talk about some viable options for some unranked fights that I think would be very fun. So yeah, first up, Gene Silva versus Bryce Mitchell. Gene Silva recently posted saying he's got fight news coming soon. He signed the contract. So hopefully we've got some Gene Silva fight news soon. I doubt he'll be on this card. I hope he is, because he's definitely the dude that you want to call when you need someone to save a card or add some excitement. They called him to fight Dober. He answered that call. He fought Dober, beat him up, had a great fight. If you booked him versus Bryce Mitchell as like a prelim headliner of this card, I wouldn't even mind him on the main card. I was going to do Gene Silver versus Josh Emmett, but I'm like, why not? I'll double up and I'll do Emmett versus Allen, Gene Silver versus Bryce Mitchell. Because Gene said he signed a contract, and if you look through the featherweight rankings, up to Josh Emmett, because I don't think they'd go further than Emmett, the only viable options is Barboza, Mitchell, and Emmett, because everyone else is either booked or injured, or just fought in the case of Allen and Giga. So I doubt they've booked that. But yeah, Gene Silver versus Bryce Mitchell would be a sick fight. Hardcore fans love Gene Silver. You know, we're me on this channel, the viewers on this channel, we're Gene Silver enjoyers, we're Gene Silver enthusiasts. So yeah, him on this card would definitely add some value in terms of something to look forward to. Let's talk about a couple more options though. This would be a really cool prelim fight, I reckon. Joel Alvarez versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. Alvarez just fought, didn't take much damage. He whooped the fuck out of Elvis Brenner for 3 rounds, pretty much finished him. But him versus Diego Ferreira would be a sick fight just outside the rankings. Would be a good way to determine who gets a ranked opponent, because like Alvarez kind of arguably deserves one, but you probably aren't going to find too many top ranked opponents willing to fight Alvarez on shortish notice. So yeah, if you do this fight, Diego Ferreira Alvarez, this is a hardcore fans banger. People would be looking forward to this one. Chuck this on the prelims. And yeah, this would be a sick fight to add, because obviously, again, I know that they're not going to add just six. There's 6 spots open on this card, in my opinion, because normally you can do a 14 fight card. There's 6 potential fights you can add. They're not just going to do 2 title fights and then 4 of these top 5 fights that I've proposed. That's why I'm proposing some of these, because I know that the early prelims are going to need to be some of the less like top ranked fights. So yeah, Alvarez versus Diego Ferreira would be a banger prelim fight that I would look forward to a lot. Let's move on then to another fight. Another prospect you could add to this card is Peyton Talbot and have him fight Adrian Yanez, because the casuals are starting to know this guy. They're comparing to O'Malley. They saw him KO Giannis Gamori in like 20 fucking seconds. And yeah, there's hype around this dude. So you could put this dude as like prelim headliner, early prelim opener, or prelim opener. Or yeah, even like early prelim, put this guy as the first fight on the card, get people in the door early, give people a reason to not just watch the main card, watch the prelims too. And yeah, Peyton Talbot versus Yanez would be a sick fight to make. Let's talk about another one though. Last fight that I'm proposing is Mauricio Rufi versus Nazim Sadyakov. This will be a cool fight to make. You could do Rufi versus anyone who's a striker really, and it would be sick. I was thinking like Rufi versus like Bobby Green, but I don't know if Bobby Green's turning around that quick after losing to Paddy. But yeah, Mauricio Rufi's a sick fighter. I think he said he might even have fight news soon too. Probably not going to be on this card, but again, these is not 100% realistic, but these are viable options that they could do if they really, like, this is me, because I know people are saying, like, what the hell are they even going to do to save this card? There's no way they can save this card. I've given, like, 20 fucking options for fights that could easily save this card. This would be a sick prelim fight on the early prelims. Rufi versus Sadyakov. Sadyakov's just in fun fights. He fought Borshev, had a bit of a war. You could do anyone. You could do Hoofy versus like fucking Michael Johnson for all I care. Just get him on this card. He'd be a definite like sick fighter to add. But I'm guessing they're probably going to do him on like the McGregor card, if I'm being honest. But yeah, those are all the fights that could save this card. Now, there is 8 spots taken up already. If I had it my way, I'm taking fucking Marina Rodriguez versus Yasmin Lucindo on this card, off this card. I'm taking fucking... You can probably deal without, like, you can take Esparza versus Pennington off this, move it to a different card probably. But I know she probably wants to fight on the same card as Raquel. So yeah, if you're not removing any fights from this card and you have 6 spots to add, I say you do, because I'm being realistic, Bilal Shafkat would be cool, but it's unlikely. I say main event, Pantoja versus Sakura. Co-main event, Colby Covington versus Charles Oliveira, or Oliveira versus Volkanovski. Not super realistic though. So if you're being realistic, Pena versus Pennington, co-main event. Add Usman versus Ian Gary as a feature fight, or one of the other ones I mentioned, Figgy versus Yarn, Allen versus Emmett. Add one of them ones as a feature fight of the card. Keep Aldo versus Batista on the main card, Movzar versus Aljo on the main card. Headline the prelims with Holland versus Curtis. Then you keep like Harrison on there, leave those ones on the prelims. Open up the prelims with Alvarez versus Diego Ferreira. Open up the prelims with Gene Silva versus Bryce Mitchell, or put that higher up, and then move down like the women's MMA fights to the early prelims. So I'd say prelim headliner, Holland versus Curtis. Next fight on the prelims, Mitchell versus Gene Silva. Next fight on the prelims, Harrison, because you probably don't want it on the early prelims. Next, opening the prelims, Alvarez versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. Early prelim headliner, Payne Talbot. And then you keep all those other fights, and then get Rufy on there too. So, and then you push all those other fights down the card. So yeah, if I'm adding 6 fights to this that are realistic, I'm adding Pantoja Asakura as a main event. I'm adding one of those top contender fights that I mentioned. So one of them ones, Usman, any of those ones, maybe even 2 ideally would be good. So add a title fight, add 2 of those top 15 fights that I mentioned, and then add Talbot, add Silva, and add Joel Alvarez or add Rufy. So maybe just 1 title fight, one of those top 5 matchups I mentioned, like Usman, Gary. So yeah, Asakura, Pantoja main event, women's title fight co-main, Usman versus Gary, Aldo and Movsas down the main card, Holland headline the prelims, and then add Gene Silva versus Bryce Mitchell, Alvarez versus Diego Ferreira, and then Payton Talbot there, and then Rufy. So add 4 of those unranked fights that I mentioned, because I know they're not going to add a bunch of top contender fights, and then add a title fight, and then add one of those top 5 fights that I mentioned. So yeah, that's the video done, guys. Quick one for you guys today. This is showing Matchmaker Left Lane is the best in the business. I know some other people, I think Bedtime did a video about 307. He gave 3 different options. We're adding a bunch of options. We're being realistic. We're giving some good title fights, some good unranked fights, some good contender fights. So yeah, let me know in the comments which fights you would want to see from here added to UFC 307 to save the card. Hopefully Dana White is watching this video. You bald fuck. Stop glazing John Jones and fix your cards as well. But yeah, that's the video done, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, follow my Instagram, Left Lane MMA. And yeah, peace out.